listening on their phones and desktops. The new WLLM-DB, The Light Live. Listen and share with a friend. The Light Live.
This ain't no ordinary world.
This is Rena Canady Lester. Welcome to Life, Hope, and All Things Canady, the life-building voice of wisdom. We're happy that you're here today with us as we discuss topics such as relationships, parenting, physical and mental health, finances, and life lessons. Thank you for being here today on Life, Hope, and All Things Canady. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's show. We are happy that you are tuning in with us on this Wisdom Wednesday, this wonderful Wisdom Wednesday, this Wednesday that God has given us. We are saying that this is the day that the Lord has made. We are going to rejoice and be glad in it. I am so happy about the topic that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about passing the baton. You know, earlier when the year started, we talked about the fact that this is a new decade. This is a new season. This is a whole new chance to do some new things. And we want to be in line with the purpose and the plan that God has for our lives. And so, in that vein, this year we're going to talk about a lot of the things that God is holding us accountable for to do in this season, 2020. Can y'all imagine? 2020. I hear a lot of my listeners saying, where has the time gone? Well, I can tell you, the time is passing and it's going to continue to pass. And unless we get on board, it's going to pass and go on without us. And so what we're going to talk about today is what is it that we are charged with in terms of this new season, in terms of passing the baton, and in terms of continuing the leg and the race. My Bishop Mark Robinson preached on Sunday to the youth, and it was an awesome message. And it ties in here because one of the things he talked about was that, you know, we talk about new chapters and we talk about what the chapters are in our life that we're on. Well, he talked about the fact that this is Black History Month and we know what the past has been. We know what those chapters are. But his question to us was, what is the new chapter calling for? What are the new chapters calling for? And so he talked about a lot of the things that we need to be aware of. He talked about the fact that it needs to be a new chapter for people to rise up and be in their calling, people to rise up and pass on legacy to their children. You know, time to love each other with the love of Christ, regardless of race, regardless of our creed and the different things. So there was a whole list of things that he came up with. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things because it kind of sparked something in me to think about these things. Now, the Bible uses the analogy, and you hear a lot of people talk about it. I've run my race. I've finished my course. What is your race? And in a race, one of the things about a race is that you're passing a baton, and the baton is being passed behind you so that the person who's coming along behind you can grab it. So both of you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to have it back in a position where they can reach for it, but then they also have to reach the baton and be willing to keep running. And so we are going to talk about this in that perspective today. So my guest today is Jessica Lewis, and she is a life coach as well as myself, and we have a desire to coach people to help them to transform their lives and to be all that they can be. So Jessica, would you kind of just introduce yourself to our listening audience and let them know a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Good day, everybody. I'm Jessica Lewis. My business is Real Solutions for Real People, and I'm a business life coach. Okay. So my primary business is to help you from the thought that is in your head, get it to the paper, and help you execute that business plan so that you can carry forth your dream and your vision. I primarily do this because I feel a lot of people have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of skills and things that we're gifted at that we're not putting into action. And so I started that business about 10 years ago, helping individuals identify their strengths and their weaknesses, in that way help them get that on paper, and then help them to use those strengths to their maximum capability so they can reach their purpose through business. So
wow,
I love what I do. I love it.
Wow, so that's a calling, and that's definitely an opportunity to push people forward into what God has called them to do. That's an awesome responsibility.
I agree. God,
yes,
that was like, I felt like even growing up as a young person, I've been mentoring since I was 14. And so I felt like that was my calling, was to help people shape their thinking, improve their strategies and their problem solving skills. And that's just kind of been my thing. So when I started a business, it was so natural for me.
Wow. You all, 478-744-0058. Call in if you have some questions, if you have feedback, if you have expertise, if you have some suggestions. We want you to call in. We especially want people to call in who feel that there is a baton that they have to pass on, and that there is information. If you have programs, you have resources, you have things that need to get out to the public, then we want you to call in today and to make the public aware. Now, with this being a national station as well, call in from wherever. You can call in from California, you can call in from Washington, D.C., I don't care. Call in from wherever it is. And those of you locally, if you have relatives or you have friends who live places besides Georgia and you want their information to be heard, call in their information as well, or call them and tell them to give us a shout out. The other thing that you can do for us is type in, because we're recording live on Facebook as well. Let us know where you're listening from. Type in where you're living, what your city is, and where some of the resources are. And those of you who will listen on the replay, if you will do hashtag replay and type that in, because we are aware that the show is during the week, the work day and the work week, then a lot of people listen at the replay. So if you listen during the replay, if you hashtag replay, and if you have resources, go ahead and type them in, because we want people to know what the resources are and what is available to them. Now, Jessica and I are going to talk a little bit from the perspective of the verse. There's a verse in the Bible that says, write the vision, make it plain, so that he who reads it may run with it. And so God kind of put a few things in my spirit when this came to me. Write the vision. And I don't know if it's because I'm in literacy. I work in literacy every day. And I just had a meeting this morning with a lot of people who, where it really makes a difference if you are literate or not. We had a meeting this morning with several agencies, probably about 25 agencies this morning. And we talked about how to reach people who are out there who need services. We talked about people who've been in the prison system, people who have been dropouts, just people in general who a lot of times don't necessarily avail themselves of the services and the things that God has placed before them. And also, there are people who aren't aware of a lot of services. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, I made a couple of notes, and we're going to just kind of chime in and talk about these things, because, you know, I'm not one of those ministers that has like 3 points and a, you know, whatever, but I got a couple of nuggets. One was write the vision, which means that you have to put it to paper. You have to put it where you can see it. And one of the things in earlier shows, you know, we talked about goal setting, and we talked about that when you're setting goals, that your goals have to be SMART. And so to reiterate that, and if you want more information about that, you could type in. But with a goal being SMART, it means it's what? Specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, and it's time limited. And so we talked about what a goal is. So write, which means you have to put it to pen and paper, and which is what God did when he wrote the Bible. Because even though it wasn't directly from his hand, he put into people and he breathed into them in the inspiration, and they had to actually take to the pen or put it to paper, which is why we have the Bible today. So the things that we need to pass on, they need to be written so that somebody else can pick it up and run with it. So we're going to talk about how to write the vision, what the vision is. We're going to talk about how to make it plain, then so that he who reads it, which goes to the literacy piece, that you got to be literate in biblical literacy as well as literacy in a lot of areas, so that they can run with it. And y'all know I'm a big proponent for health. And you got to be able to move that vision, and you got to be able to get up and go with it. So let's just kind of start. Let's talk about writing the vision first. What would you say, Jessica, is with us being life coaches, people who are dealing with, especially a lot of young people today, what would you say is the vision? And I know God gives us different parts of the vision. He may give it to me one way, he may give it to you in another way. But what would you say is the overall vision that we need to all be on one accord about, and then take our little piece with it and run? But what would you say is the vision?
If we're talking about life vision, I would say we need to be finding our purpose.
Right.
Why do we feel like we're here on this earth to do? And so the reason why I say that is I think oftentimes we are knocking on a bunch of doors looking for an answer about things that should be our purpose in life. And at times it's really hard for us to be able to pinpoint that and actually run with it, which I'm sure we're going to talk about running with it later. And so that's kind of why for me, early on, I was grateful to have people who believed in me. I had mentors. I had people, even younger people that were my age. They knew that I was different. You know, it was just something about me that I never caved into peer pressure, or I wasn't a follower. And so I think sometimes when we're trying to find our purpose, we're doing what is trendy at the time.
Right.
We're doing it because of peer pressure, maybe because somebody told us to do it, or our parents say, well, this is the industry you should be in. And so we never really focus on what's important to us and what makes us feel good. And so even as grown adults, we sometimes don't find our purpose until, I never say it's too late. So let me be clear on that. It doesn't matter when you find your purpose, just find it. And rock with it once you do, and own it, and focus on how you can be the best at what your purpose is.
And would you agree, because this is something that I found to be true, is that whatever your purpose is, sometimes because of your seasons in life, even though your purpose may not change in terms of overall, but what God expects for you in one season may be totally different in another season.
Oh, yeah.
So would you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I think there's also going to be, because you're a growing person, and I always say we're all on the potter's wheel. You know, God is always working on us.
Right.
There's going to be times where something that was good for you at a certain point in time in your life may not be good for you later down the line. And so when that shift happens, you should not be embarrassed. You should still embrace it. And you should just constantly work towards moving to that new thing, whatever that new thing may be. And don't be afraid to have a conversation with God about it.
Right.
You know, just say, God, I don't know why you're pushing me towards X, Y, Z, but I'm sure you're going to order my step. And you allow him to do that. And you accept it and just keep going with it.
And see, that's so important, and a lot of people need to hear that, because, for instance, one of the things in my coaching that I find is that the 25-ish, 35-ish type are always rushing, going, you know, always talking about time constraints, talking about that they can't do a lot of different things. But yet, if we go along with, well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we look at the different things and the stages where we are in life, for instance, then one of the things is that you have to be aware of what your calling is at that particular time.
That's right.
For instance, if you have little children, you may not be able to give as much time to being out there working 50 hours a week, even though you know that that's something you want to do, or you may have to pray and ask God to show you how to do that.
Right.
You know, because your children have to be raised, because you have to look at their needs in terms of what God is holding you accountable for in terms of their needs. Right. So if we know that we need to pour into them and we need to make sure that they are the best person they can be, God is holding us accountable for that. Right. But if you're never at home, then how can you make sure that the child is getting their needs met, as well as you're out there, you know, wanting to be the best businessman, being the best whatever, building your business. So could you talk about that just a little bit in terms of, because we're talking about writing the vision. Right. Your vision may have to kind of be altered a little bit and then added to maybe a little bit later. What are your thoughts on that?
What I heard you say is that people have challenges with balancing. And so I feel like there's no such thing as balance. There's never any one thing that you can give enough attention to or put enough effort into. But what I will say is, a part of being in business is you have to be organized. Right. And so, again, your children may feel neglected. Your husband or wife may feel neglected. Your friends may feel neglected. But what I will always say is, if you are doing the best you can with what you have, you're able to allow for anything to have some kind of attention. And so an example of that would be, and I'm single with no children and all I have is a dog. Okay. And so you could take me with a grain of salt, but I'm going to tell you from my human service experience, I've seen it all happen. So I've seen instances where men have this concept of, I have to be the breadwinner, so I need to work extra hours to make more money to bring that money back into the house. Whereas the wife is like, no, I just want you home. Right. Or it could be the other way around, where the wife is a constant worker and the children are saying, Mom, I just want you home. And so the issue that will always lie is, are you ever doing enough for everybody? You know, and more importantly, in all of that, you have to ask yourself, how are you treating yourself? And so how my work day is, I wake up and I talk to God, and then from there, everybody else gets their time. And so my day is scheduled all the way up to about 6:30 at night. Every now I do leave some free time in the middle of the day for about an hour or two in case I have to reschedule an appointment or squeeze somebody else in. Right. But for the most part, every part of my day, even time spent with my dog, is in my schedule. And so I don't feel like there needs to be a balance. It's just you have to give everybody their time. And more importantly, you have to communicate with people to let them know, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I want you to be in my life. If you're married, you don't have a choice. But if you're not married, or even if you have children and you're a single parent, you have to even have that conversation with your children. See, people feel like, well, I'm the parent, I don't tell them anything. No, you do have to tell your children, hey, mommy is going to work late tonight, or daddy has to work on the weekends, or I may miss a game, or it's just about communication. I think if you're able to communicate that to whomever is in your circle, I think you could have some really successful relationships. You can have a successful business. You can work a job and do all of that at the same time. So that's why I say I don't believe in balance. I believe that if you are good with your time, you can allot everything that needs to have time and energy to your schedule every day, and you can be successful at it.
Well, and I think that's too where the when you have a family mission statement.
Oh yeah.
And if you
have to have a life plan.
You have to have a life plan, and that plan is going to incorporate everybody that's in your life.
That's right.
And so then if you have the life plan that a mission for your family, that we are going to be a cohesive unit, we're going to make sure that we pretty much meet everybody's needs, then you're going to incorporate that into the mission statement, into the plan, the vision for your family that we're talking about, and you're going to put all that in. Even your dog, you're going to write him in.
That's right.
You know, and I'm going to give
And he can't talk back.
And he can't talk.
But he knows he's the part of the plan.
And he can let you know that he needs to be part of the plan.
Hello.
I'm going
to be in that house,
Yeah. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a dog, Bo, and he was a Weimaraner. Big dog. Okay. And he was pretty much letting me know in the evenings when I got home that I had not incorporated him enough.
Yeah, they need attention.
I would get to the door and he would push against the door to not even want to let me in.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I was like, oh no, wait a minute. Now you think you're my husband or something? Because
They do.
And they told me at PetSmart, they said, these dogs are very smart. They know when you're not focused on them. They know, and they want to be there. Yeah. They want to be in your life. That's and whatever. Right. And so that is analogous to the things that are in our life that are calling for our attention. Some days your husband may get more attention than everything else. Yeah. Some days your children, but you have to still account for all of those pieces.
For sure.
The wheel of life. Can you talk about that? With that wheel, if anybody has ever done that, where you graph out the different places that you spend your time. Sometimes that wheel, I think of the Fred Flintstone.
Yeah.
When they're riding down the street and that's not a perfect circle and they're kind of bumping along, and that's how our life is going to be sometimes, but it's rolling. You don't want that wheel to be where it's flat and it's not moving at all. But you got to keep it going. So what would you say in terms of what's the way, write a vision? What would be a way, or give an example of a vision statement, for instance, that a family could write? Because I know we talk a lot about and we give these things out, but a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to do that. Okay, what would be a vision statement for a young entrepreneurial woman that has 2 small children? She has a husband, and she has a goal, but she wants to be the best mom too. What is a goal, or what is a statement, a mission statement or a vision that she could write for her life that's going to help guide her through her day? If you were coaching this woman, what would be a mission statement or vision that you could help her write?
I would start with her. So the beginning of her vision statement should say something like, I will take care of myself no matter what.
Okay.
So you start with an I statement, because we always forget to put our mask on ourselves first before we help people and do everything else in life. So she can start with her I statement, and then she will go on to the we statement. So that's where, if she's married, husband and wife come in. So we agree to support each other in our visions and our goals no matter what. And I say no matter what because that's we operate off of conditions all the time, and so when we put conditions on things, it's like, well, only if you like me that day will you be supportive. So we want the no matter what in there, right? And then you then go to the children, and so God goes first. Let me be clear on that. And so it's God, then you, then we, husband and wife, and then your family, which is your children. So I didn't include mother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, cousins, because they're not in the 4 walls of your house.
Right.
And so business would be last, because guess what? If you didn't take care of God, you didn't have a relationship with God, you didn't care for yourself, you didn't do right by your husband and your children, you're not going to be successful in business.
Amen.
So I say it in that order, and whatever you fill the blank in with can be yours, but always put no matter what at the end, because one, in all of that, you never want to lose yourself. You definitely, I pray you don't want to lose your husband.
Right.
You definitely don't want to lose your children, and a part of not losing them comes in the form of you not neglecting them, and including them. And so that's kind of why I said you fill in your blanks with things that's including them. So I will communicate with you all the time about what's going on with my business or even personally, because that's a reason why people get divorced. They don't know how to communicate.
Right.
Children don't like their parents because parents don't know how to communicate to the children, and children don't know how to articulate their emotions. I can go on and on.
Right.
But all of those are things that kind of push to why people can't be successful as a family unit. And so my advice to end that is to God first, your personal self, your husband, your children, and then that business. And you may even have a job in there. And so keep in mind that it's no matter what. So if you're really trying to, and I'll use the word balance for topics, say if you're really trying to balance all of that, you really have to have a life plan for each component of what you're doing.
Each component, yes. And the passing of the baton becomes so important because when your children see how you're managing this, and when the people in your circle and everyone else see how you have set a plan for your life, it's easier for them to run with what they see because you've been a good example. They've seen you live out what it is that you're practicing what you preach.
Yes.
So we talked about the writing the vision. We talked about making it plain because we talked about communication. And we said, so that he who reads it may run with it. Now, we're talking reads with it and runs with it. Reading is so important when it comes to biblical literacy, but also when it comes to just literacy in general. What would you say about being able to read? How important is it to read?
I think reading is equally as important as comprehending. So if it's not plain and if it's not written, obviously no one can be able to read it or comprehend it. But once you've done those parts and you lay it out there, it should be easy to understand. So they say you should read things from left to right. It's just stuff you learn in school, but you also want to read for understanding, and you never should shoot the messenger. So even if you don't like what you're reading, you can't blame that person that wrote it. They did what they're supposed to do. Whatever you take out of it, so that's the comprehension part, is whatever you take out of it. So you can leave some things or you can take some things, but you have to understand how to read. That's basic things because some people learn differently. So I'm not going to go deep into that today. But reading is being a visual learner or experiential learner is some of those things. And that's how you pass your legacy on, is being able to teach other people what you know. And sometimes it's going to come in the form of you writing a vision down or a plan and someone being able to read that.
And we'll talk more because, of course, I'm going to have to have you back because I love it when we have rich topics. And then we have topics that need a little bit more elaboration. So if you're willing to come back, because you're talking about being able to read it and being able to, so the person has to understand the importance of being able to read and comprehend and place it and put it in a format that somebody else can take and go with. So we'll elaborate on that a little bit more because we're almost out of time, but I wanted to make sure we get to the part about running. It says, so that he who reads it may run with it.
Yes.
You got to be able to run. You got to be able to move. And y'all, so many people, and I know people don't like to think about this, but we are not immortal here on this earth. We are mortal beings. We're gonna, we are, I guess we'll be immortal when we die, depending on, we're gonna be somewhere. When it's over. But we are in a body here that means that death can come at any time, or illness, or whatever. And so we have to make the best use of all of the time that we have. And so when we're doing the baton passing, we can't say, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then when I'm 50, I'm going to make sure I write it down, or I'm going to change, or I'm going to do whatever. Life is not promised to you.
That's right.
And so when we talk about running with it, can you elaborate on how important it is? Now, I've talked a lot in my shows about your health is your wealth, that you got to be healthy, that God has us accountable for our bodies. We're good stewards and all of that. What would you say about being able to run with this vision?
On a physical, emotional, and spiritual level, if you are not whole, your vision will perish.
Right.
And so running in the aspect of physical means that you physically are able to run. So if you're not healthy, it's not going to happen.
Right.
running with the idea in the spiritual respect is being able to be spiritually strong enough to carry on the burden of carrying out the vision.
Right.
So if you're weak there, you're going to have an issue. And then, of course, emotionally, the same thing. You can't be an emotional wreck and trying to carry out something. You're just going to be frantic. You're just not going to be able to, concentrate. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be stressed. And so running is not just always one aspect. It's also spiritual and emotional as well. And a lot of times people don't realize that you can't burn yourself out. You can't overwhelm yourself. You can't stretch yourself too thin, or your body is going to break down, and your vision is it's not going to happen. Right.
And so, it's like they say, the graveyard is the richest place on earth.
That's
because you have people who have goals, who have visions that die within them because they were not able to run with that vision. Or they weren't able to run with it, or who they passed on the baton to was not able to run with it. So y'all, this, as you see, is a rich topic.
Oh yeah,
it's a rich topic, and I think we're probably going to have a part 2 of this and continue, because what we need to also talk about then is what your gift is, what God has challenged you or charged you with when you're writing that vision, making sure that your purpose, as you mentioned, Jessica, earlier, that God has a purpose and a plan for us. And so how are we going to make sure that when we die, when we leave here, our purpose and our plan has been fulfilled? That when we pass that baton on, we have passed on what we were called to pass on. All right. So y'all, we're out of time for today.
Oh, sorry, guys.
And we thank you all for listening in. This time goes very, very fast, especially when we're talking about a topic that's just so rich.
Yes.
But are you available next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Part 2.
Part 2 then.
Next
We'll
week.
do part 2 next week. And we will look forward to you joining us. Remember, if you're watching on the replay, do hashtag replay. Type in your comments, and we will be glad to follow up with you. So y'all be blessed until next time, and we look forward to seeing you on next week.
See y'all next week, part 2. Take care.
Thank you for experiencing the wisdom of life, hope, and all things Canady with his life-building attitudes and thinking from the perspective of timeless wisdom. Remember that you are valuable. You have purpose, and God has a plan for your life. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at All Things Canady. Email comments and prayer requests to allthingscanady@gmail.com. I look forward to our next time together.